Hello, welcome to Genetics lecture video number 7. This is where we talk about genetics, what are called genetics pedigrees or family trees is what we call them. So what do family trees do? They pretty much show us how a certain characteristic is passed down from generation to generation. People who are shaded in demonstrate individuals that have a particular trait. Let's say this trait is you want to see who in your family has a widow's peak in their hairline where their hair comes to a point. And we can say all these people here that are shaded in, they have widow's peaks. Karina has one, Nick has one, John has one, Diesel has one, Kim and Rocco. Okay? So you can pick a disease, you can pick a characteristic, you can pick whatever you want. What you're trying to do is to see how that trait or how that characteristic is passed down from generation to generation. We need to figure out what's called the inheritance pattern. Once you figure out the inheritance pattern, is then your goal to figure out what is their genotype, what letters do they have according to their, based off of this particular family tree. So males, square, females, circles. Not shaded in means you do not have a particular trait. Shaded in means they do have a trait. So Jim and Karina, you could say they're married. They have some children. They have Kevin, Rhea, and Diesel as their children. Rhea mates with Nick. The sideways line shows you that they're mating or producing offspring. Their offspring branch down from them, John, Fran, and Margot. John, Fran, and Margot are the grandchildren of Jim and Karina. Nick is married or mating with Rhea. Nick is not their child. He's married to their child. Diesel is Jim and Karina's child. Diesel is married to Kim. They have 2 children, Tank and Rocco. Okay? Karina has this trait. Nick has it. Diesel does. Kim, Rocco, and John all have this. We can say this trait, for example, could be the widow's peak is the characteristic you're looking at. Now, your goal is when you look at these pedigrees is to figure out, first off, what's called the inheritance pattern. How is it passed down from Karina here to Diesel? Karina has it. Diesel has it. Jim doesn't have it, but why did Diesel get it? So the whole idea is to figure out how it was passed down. That's the inheritance pattern. And once you know the inheritance pattern, then you have to label the genotypes of the squares and the circles, the people. All right. So I'm going to show you how to do it with some relatively simpler type of pedigrees initially, and then it's going to gradually get more difficult each day we work on these. All right. So I'm going to show you now how to figure out if it's sex linked. Then I'm going to show you how to figure out if it's autosomal recessive. Then I'm going to show you how to figure out if it's autosomal dominant. Autosomal is a fancy word that means not sex linked. So sex linked, X's and Y's are required. You have to use X's and Y's. Autosomal recessive, just capital A's, lowercase a. Autosomal dominant, same thing, capital A, lowercase a, no X's and Y's. So sex linked and recessive, not sex linked but recessive, not sex linked and dominant. Those are your 3 choices, okay? So let me explain to you how you're going to do them. All right, here's the first slide. Showing you sex linked. So the whole idea is I have 1, 2, 3, 4 that are sex linked, 1, 2, 3 that are not sex linked. I'm going to show you why they're not sex linked, and then I'm going to show you why these ones are sex linked now. So the whole concept of pedigrees is if you just look at a pedigree and start labeling genotypes, you will be able to label certain genotypes and they will work out just fine, but you may be wrong on what you're doing. The statement is confusing that I just said to you. So what does this whole idea mean? When you look at a pedigree, for example, when you look at this pedigree, you need to first tell me how it is not sex linked. Okay? So you need to look at this pedigree and tell me how it's not sex linked. If you can tell me it's not sex linked, then you can move on to number 2. Okay? If you look at this pedigree and nowhere on the pedigree you can tell me why it's not sex linked, if you cannot prove that it is not sex linked, then this pedigree is sex linked. Okay? So I'm going to show you right now what I mean by that. Look at this first statement. If a female has the trait, that means if a female is shaded in, then all of her sons must have the trait. So We are checking if the pedigree is sex-linked and recessive. This first statement, if a female has it, then all her sons must have the trait. Let's go back to that pedigree. See this female? Karina has it. Her son, Kevin, he doesn't have the trait. The fact that Kevin doesn't have it, it means we just proved that this pedigree is not sex-linked. So every female that has it must have sons. If they have sons, their sons must have it. Kevin has it. Kevin doesn't have it, and Diesel does. So the fact that Kevin doesn't have it, we have just proved sex-linked wrong. So we know it's not number one. Once we've proved number one wrong, we can now move to number two. Okay? That's the whole concept. If you can't prove number one wrong, then guess what you have? You have number one. All right? So let's go through them. All right? So first statement, if a female has a trait, then all her sons must have the trait. See this female? Keyword if. She has it. Does her son have it? Yes. That's her only child. One son, one child. And he has the trait. So far, this works. This shows me that this one is sex-linked so far. Okay? Let's look at the opposite. Let's look at the one that doesn't work. Female has it. One son has it. One son doesn't have it. So if a female has it, all her sons must have it. This is not sex-linked. Okay? We've proven this one not sex-linked. So now we would go, this one is not number one. We would now look at number two. Okay? This one, we can't prove number one wrong. So guess what we have? We have number one. That's how it works. All right? And number one is sex-linked and recessive. Here's the next statement. If a female has the trait, then her father must have the trait. All right? Look at this one here. Female has it. Her father has it. Okay? Female has it. Her father has it. Sex-linked, sex-linked. We can't prove it wrong. Okay? Down here, look. Female has it. Her father doesn't have it. Not sex-linked. Okay? This one is not sex-linked because if a female has it, her father must have it also. So not sex-linked down here, not sex-linked, not sex-linked. This one sex-linked, this one's sex-linked so far. All right? Next one. If both parents have the trait, then all of their children must have the trait. Mom and dad both have it. All their kids have it. Also, she has it. Her dad has it. Also, mom has it. All of her sons have it. This one is sex-linked. This one, we've proven sex-linked. This one, we've proven sex-linked. Okay? Down here, mom and dad have it. They have a daughter that doesn't have it. That we've just proved this one is not sex-linked. Okay? If both parents have it, all their children must have it. Both parents have it, all their children must have it. So this one is not sex-linked. So these three down here, we have proven that they are not sex-linked. Since we've proven they are not sex-linked, now we move on and check number two to see if they are number two. Okay? These ones here, we cannot prove any of them wrong. Now look at this one here. This one here, it didn't meet any of these rules. None of them apply to it. If no rules apply to it, okay, that does not mean it's not sex-linked. So look at this. Okay? If none of the above statements apply, none of the above statements apply to this one. Okay? Which means, guess what? Then your pedigree is sex-linked. So this one is sex-linked and recessive because none of the statements apply to it. That's fine. It doesn't mean it's not sex-linked. Okay? If none of them apply to it, it is still sex-linked. If you cannot disprove any of these statements, then it is also sex-linked. All right? If you know it's sex-linked, you do not look at number two. You do not look at number three. You stop right there, and now you start labeling the pedigrees according to these labels. Okay? So what does this statement say? Use these labels down here for sex-linked and recessive genotypes. Try to fill, see how there's a blank there? Try to fill in the blanks if you can. Leave them blank if you cannot determine the exact genotype. I'm going to show you what that means in a second. Okay? And let me go back to another important statement over here. If you disprove sex-linked and recessive with one of the above statements, then move on to the second type. Not applying to it does not mean disproving it. So make sure you're aware of that. Okay? So now, we got to use the labels to label all the genotypes. These are the genotypes so that we can see if we can figure out what the genotypes are of the people. Now, here are the labels. All these genotypes have been done for us. I did them for you. So if you notice, all I did is I took this information here and I copied it onto my pedigrees. That's all I did. So look at this one. Empty square, X large, X big A, Y. Circle shaded in, X small a, X small a. Square shaded in, X small a, Y. Okay. Square not shaded in, X large A, Y. Circle not shaded in, X large A, X blank. The goal is to see if we can figure out of that blank what goes in there. All right. And then down here, another female not shaded in, X large A, X blank. We got to figure that out. Another one over here, X small a, Y for the male, the female, X big A, X blank. The whole goal is to figure them out. So we've labeled them all here. All right. Now down here, I labeled these ones down here to show you why they are not sex-linked. If you did this one and you thought it was sex-linked, once you labeled it, you would have realized very quickly that it is not sex-linked. And let me show you why. This male down here has an X capital A and a Y. Boys or males can only get their Y from their dad. Dad is the only one with a Y. Mom has no Ys. So mom cannot give a Y. That Y came from dad, which means the other XA, X capital A, came from mom. But look, mom doesn't have an X and a capital A. Since mom doesn't have that, she cannot make that son. This is impossible. And that is why this is not sex-linked. Over here, how can we prove this one is not sex-linked? Well, we copied the labels onto it, and we noticed that this female is X small a, X small a. And then we notice her dad is X big A, Y. Dad doesn't have a small a to give that daughter. Therefore, this is not sex-linked. You cannot have sex-linked with this kind of situation. Over here, if dad is shaded in, dad is X small a, Y. Mom is shaded in, mom is X small a, X small a. And look, they produce a daughter with a capital A. Okay? There's no capital A's to pass down. Therefore, this is impossible. This cannot be sex-linked. So sometimes the labeling might help you prove whether something is sex-linked after you assumed it was, and then you realize once you labeled it, things just didn't work out according to your labeling. And so then you proved it wrong after the fact, but that's okay. All right. So now the next step, once you have these blanks on here, the next step is I want to know their genotypes. If you can give me their exact genotype, give me their exact genotype. Is that a capital A or a lowercase a, or do I just leave it blank because I don't know exactly what goes there? So once you do this, let's do it. Here's what it should look like. Okay, now look at this one here. Okay, that is an X small a. Where did I get that X lowercase a? Well, look over here. Their son has an X lowercase a and a Y. Y has to come from dad. Okay, that means that X lowercase a has to come from mom, which means mom up here, that is a lowercase a. That blank becomes a lowercase a. Okay, down here, look at this one. Okay, the capital A came from dad. Why? Because dad only has a capital A. But mom has both a capital A and a lowercase a. So this could be X big A, X big A. This could be X big A, X small a. It could be either one. We do not know for certain which one it is. So you would leave that blank there because you are not for sure or for certain what it is. So this would be the correct answer. X capital A, X blank. The blank means you do not know exactly what that letter is that goes there. All right. Back over here, we figured this one out to be X small a. How did we figure that out? Well, look, their daughter has X small a, X small a. One came from dad, one came from mom. So now we proved that that one is a small a. Okay. So that's how you have to go in after the fact and prove if something is, you can see if you can prove the letters that belong in the blanks. All right. So let's pretend these were the pedigrees we were doing, and we proved that they were not sex-linked. Once you've proved it's not sex-linked, you move on to number 2, not number 3, number 2. You do number 2 next. And then number 2 is going to look like this. Number 2 is autosomal and recessive, not sex-linked and recessive. If you notice, I have no X's and Y's here. Okay. There's no X's and Y's. They're just capital A's and lowercase a's. All right. Now, this is nice. To prove sex-linked wrong, you only got one statement that you got to work with. If both parents have the trait, then all their children must have the trait. Okay. I know that's a rule on the previous one. That's okay. It's also the rule for this one. Okay. So if both parents have the trait, then all their kids must have the trait. Okay? That's autosomal. That works. All right? And now look, this one here. Well, we don't have a scenario where both parents have the trait. This one here, there are no rules to prove this one wrong. Since you cannot prove it wrong, guess what? This one is number 2. It is autosomal and recessive. So there's only one rule here. Both parents have it. All their children must have it. That rule doesn't apply to this one. Not applying does not mean it is false. It just means you cannot prove it wrong. If you cannot prove it wrong, that is what you have. Okay? So if you disprove autosomal recessive with the above statement, then move on to the third type called autosomal and dominant. So let me show you what this means. Both parents have it and their kids don't have it. So that means we've proved this one wrong. Both parents have it. One kid has it. One kid doesn't have it. We proved this one wrong. These both are not autosomal and recessive. We proved them wrong by doing these steps here. What this shows you here, this is twins. That's what twins look like, in case you're wondering what this branch means. So these are identical female twins right here. All right? So if the above statement doesn't apply here, or if you cannot disprove it here, then your pedigree is autosomal and recessive. Okay? If you disprove it, then you go to number 3 and you're done. You don't need to prove anything wrong. Number 3 is the last one. Okay? But we couldn't prove these ones wrong. So the next step is now you start labeling. And that's what this should look like next. So all I did is I took everybody shaded in, male or female, is small a's. Everybody not shaded in is a capital with a blank. Capital with a blank. Okay? So now let's look and see what happens here. All right? Let's see why these ones were proved wrong. And I'll show it to you. Look, mom and dad have all these small a's. You can't have children with capital A's. All right? That's why these are proved wrong. You can't have capital A's show up out of nowhere when mom and dad don't have capital letters like that. So now let's go back up here. We don't have any blanks up here. That's easy. Over here, we have 3 blanks. Okay, let's see if we can figure out those blanks. See this child here? These small a's. One came from mom. One came from dad. Whoops. Small a's. One came from mom. One came from dad. So we know that dad and mom are capital A lowercase, capital A lowercase. But this one down here, we know the capital A could have come from dad or mom. We know that both of them could have given a capital A also or a lowercase a. We do not know what the second letter is. So you would leave it blank, meaning you cannot prove exactly what that letter is. Okay, that's how you would label these genotypes. So all I did is I transposed the information over like before, and I tried to fill in the blanks, and then I filled them in. And that's what they ended up looking like. Okay. Finally, if you prove something wrong for number 1 and number 2, you're left with number 3, and that's your only option. Okay, so you have to have number 3. So here's number 3. There's only one rule here, and you don't even have to prove it right or wrong. You know why you don't have to prove it right or wrong? Because if you disproved 1 and 2, then it has to be number 3. But here's a rule. If a male or female has the trait, then at least one of their parents must also have the trait. Not one of their children, one of their parents. So these people have the trait, but we don't know what their parents look like. Okay? But at least one of their parents must have it. Okay? But look, so this particular statement doesn't necessarily apply to this, but it doesn't mean it's wrong, right? These 2 people, they have it. This person, both of his parents have it in this case, okay? So this one, none of the statements here apply to it, but that's okay. If you've proved 1 and 2 wrong, you automatically have to have number 3. Then you take this information here and you transpose it onto the pedigrees. That's what it should look like. Okay, now you got to see if you can figure in these blanks. Well, look at their kids. All have small a's. So what do those letters have to be? They also have to be small a's. Okay, over here. Okay, so originally it looked like this. Well, look at this child, small a's. Dad, mom. Okay, down here, just like before, this person could be capital A, or capital A, lowercase a. They could be either one. We do not know which one they are for certain, so we would leave them blank. Okay? So this is how you attack these problems. You start with number 1. You go with number 1. If you can prove number 1 wrong, then you go to number 2. If you cannot prove it wrong, then stay there. That is the one that you have. Okay? Good luck on today's assignment. Hopefully this will help you guys.